Humanity is in a crisis. We are engulfed in turmoil, disease, death, and despair. Our nations have been crippled by a surging pandemic, failed leadership, and plunging economies. The wealthy, however, have gotten richer and the poor poorer. The balance of power has shifted severely in a very short time by the exploitation of a wounded people. Where does this put the everyday man, woman, and child? We as a people are in a precarious and vulnerable position. It would be easy for a sinister, powerful force to strike at this moment. Humanity would be defenseless and at the mercy of a merciless attacker. It has been believed that there is a sinister and secretive group of people that run the globe. They control everything from banks to the media. They own the world. They own 99% of the world's wealth, but yet they are less than 1% of the world's population. They have special family bloodlines to pass on power from generation to generation. They have sacred rites and secret rituals. They are all part of secret societies that have joined to form a unified coalition, resulting in the most powerful ruling force on the planet, but remaining hidden in the shadows. They are the ruling elite. They have a belief system that stretches back in time for thousands of years to their very origin. They spawned the religions, royal families, global business, financial systems, and arms companies. They have been doing all of this and more with one goal in sight: a one-world government, a new world order. This is the darkest untold tale of control in the history of mankind. For the New World Order has already begun and will continue to expand at an alarming pace. So who is running the show, you might ask? Well, that's the tricky part. This New World Order is centuries in the making, and just when you think you've identified the bad guy, he's hung out to dry in an attempt to maintain face, as the agenda is all that matters, and no one is more important than the agenda. This is a team game, and the team serves the agenda no matter what. What has deviously transpired is the unification of secret societies, controlled from the top. There's a bloodline. There's a generational thing going on here. There's a dragon court in operation, and they use the dragon and the serpent symbol. It's right there in your face because that's their logo. Ultimately, if you look at what they've been pushing for, it's consolidation of power to themselves. Their philosophy was reduced into a simple phrase: believe nothing and dare all. Religion was destroyed in the mind of the follower. All morals were eradicated. There was no other aid than to realize the projects of the masters, for whom it was said, nothing was sacred. The secret instructions were to simply practice and gain great sleight of hand so as to fascinate eyes in order to work miracles which are expected of you, to fool all. Today, within ruling elite, nothing is sacred. Everything is acceptable to achieve the master's goal. Over thousands of years, they were finally turning to the dark side. Through meditation and other forms, they believe they are achieving union again with the masters from whom they receive universal teachings. Their role is to carry out the great work of worldwide unification, religious, political, and intellectual, to make a one-world government, a one-world agenda, to reunite the creative principle and bring about a new creation, a new world order under the Master. But who is on the side of the light? And who is on the side of the dark? With this sect, we see a prediction that would be repeated in other so-called separate orders, and which seems to run as a threat throughout our time and across the world. They, like today's Islamic State, predict the end of the world as we know it, and a new one to come. This is a long-standing prediction, and one that strangely may yet come true. Their plan for the end of the world is at hand, and it will be signaled by a mighty army from the east under the guidance of a universal mind. The army will come from China, and Christians and Muslims will surrender and march towards Mecca, where the divine will appear before them. They claim that all the brotherhoods of the world have a part in bringing this prediction to pass, or in other words, making it happen. All of these Oriental beliefs are in fact the same. They all originated thousands of years ago in the Syrian and Persian secret sects, who had come to an understanding of an enlightenment regarding the existence of mankind. Whether they used drugs or meditation, the results were the same: the realization of our place in the universe. These beliefs were taken over by members of the dark side, who started to use it for power and control, and to bring about the unification of a one-world government, which they control. It has been a useful global tool for high-powered members of the real ruling elite to manipulate, as it did so in the French and American revolutions, even to the murder of presidents such as Abraham Lincoln. As mankind raced towards the Great Enlightenment and the glories of the brutal French Revolution, several masters appeared to the world from their dark hideouts. They did so to ensure the plan they had formulated came to fruition. One such master went by the name of Perniti, and he founded or revealed the Illuminati of the Avignon. As with most of these stories, we have to understand that this itself was symbolic, to hide the truth from the ordinary person. He wrote books in occult numbers and codes that are difficult to decipher. Perniti, as it was said, was to found a new people of God, and he grew so influential that he built a temple. They kept absolute secret. They did their work, spread the mystical ideas, and rebuffed the old ways. Their influence was at large. When Perniti died, his huge number of followers were simply swallowed up by another branch of the secret ruling elite, the Martinists. These Martinists were based in Paris, where their work was coming to a final conclusion with the French Revolution. They allied themselves with another infamous branch created by Adam Weishaupt, unknown to the world as the Illuminati. Generally, to the esoteric world of the occult, all these groups come under a name, the Illumes. Whether they claim to be Rosicrucian, Illuminati, or Freemason, the ultimate thread that spawns them all is ancient and based upon the very things we have been discovering: illumination. The Illumes exercise extreme secrecy and influence society in multiple ways. There is a conspiracy being plotted so well, planned, and so deep that it will be very difficult for religion and governments not to succumb to it. Their purpose is also revealed as the masters are committed to work with all their strength to establish on earth the association of all interests, the federation of all nations, the alliance of all cults, and universal solidarity. Their own personal goal is the master's bidding to establish a one-world government.
One of the cul-de-sacs of conspiracy research is you get so focused on the twigs, you can't see the forest. It doesn't matter if they're called the Illuminati or Aunt Ethel's teapot. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they exist and what they're trying to do and how they are manipulating us to make it happen. So, we can talk about names of organizations, and I do, but whether they're called the Illuminati or whether they're called something else really doesn't matter. I mean, we've got to get out of that and into this and see how the things fit together instead of getting so focused, train spotter style, on fine bloody detail. Because I see, conspiracy researchers arguing over fine detail. The house is on bloody fire, and they're arguing about, what the name is of the door they want to go through to try to call the fire brigade. Excuse me, what are we having this conversation for? The house is on fire. What are we going to do about it?
The word we use to describe this powerful group simply describes how they originated in the search for illumination. In this original sin, they began the journey to the dark side. They guarded their secrets, but soon they guarded their power, wealth, information, knowledge, and existence. They plotted against those who disagreed. They took down governments, and it seemed easy. They had the power of secrecy, the power that is worth more than any fortune. And they still hold this power. They still plot and scheme. Governments are still overthrown. Heads of state still murdered by secret assassins. The job is not yet done. The end is not in sight. More has to happen for the one world government to take control. The world is still too desperate, and men in power too greedy for the dollars created from the division and hatred. Throughout time, many writers have seemingly predicted the way our society would evolve. They wrote books about how it would become more restrictive, more controlled, essentially becoming a dictatorship disguised as a free world. The question remains, however, who exactly are these visionaries such as Orwell, and how did they acquire such knowledge? H.G. Wells was a man who was seriously into the world of esoteric secret societies. Jules Verne as well was involved. These are people who were involved in the esoteric, involved in the secret societies, highly involved in politics. H.G. Wells himself coined the term New World Order. Wells was deeply influential with the beginnings of the UN. In fact, a lot of people think that the UN was formed from his very own ideas. H.G. Wells came with his scientific idealism, his scientific utopianism, and ideas on social fascism. Conan Doyle was a Freemason. Along with George Orwell, These legendary writers built what they learned into their stories. They were intrigued by the concept of a utopia on earth, to have a new Jerusalem, which resonate provocatively in their books.
The thing that people need to look at when they're looking at 1984 and other examples of novels or prophecies or whatever that projected forward long distances and have proved to be accurate in terms of what's happening today, they need to ask themselves, how could they, all those decades ago and more, predict that things were going to happen with technology that hadn't even been invented then? How would they know that?
George Orwell was working for the BBC at the time that he wrote 1984. He had a certain insight into some of the rather more extremist elements within the ruling class in Britain. He was aware that there was a ruling elite with untold power, with complete disregard for human life.
Someone who is completely welded to this so-called 5 sense solid reality and believes that it's real and believes that this world is all there is, or believes in some religious deity or whatever, it's going to be one hell of a shock when they realize that their whole belief system was fraudulent, their whole belief system was completely illusory. And it's basically like sitting in a room and other people in the room, in the little room, are telling you that this is all there is nothing else, or the something else beyond the room is some religious deity. And you get brought up in that room, your whole experience and knowledge and everything comes from that room. And then someone comes along and takes the lid off. Have a look at that, darling. I mean, it's going to blow your mind, isn't it?
His alarm and concern for the common people manifested into his book, 1984. The ideas and philosophies of 1984 are more relevant than ever in today's world with the advent of modern technologies. Currently, this malevolent force is more powerful than ever, inching closer to initiating their evil plan against us, utilizing the latest technologies. Behind all of this are the massive, greedy international corporations. Side by side with these are the nation's politicians, both monitors and manipulators on a huge scale, and that manipulation is becoming more and more automated. We can now talk to an artificially intelligent customer service representative and do all of our business without ever having to deal with another human. This alarming trend is swiftly expanding globally. We are all slaves to the machine. Will mankind be smart enough to have a safety device on these artificial intelligent minds that we are letting loose? The world's biggest computer and mobile phone company regularly releases updates that have flaws in them. Are we to trust them to release a mind upon the World Wide Web that can think as fast as the speed of light, with all the knowledge of the world and its history? Such a mind would be able to stop the world of humans from resistance. The whole thing could be catastrophic, or even worse than that. It could indeed all be controlled from a central location. Used to do the master's bidding. But who owns these corporations? The banks? And who owns the banks? With online media playing a fundamental role in our everyday lives, the effect of viewing alternative information in documentaries and presentations can have profound implications. And while you may want to inform everyone in your circle of friends and family, you may have some resistance to your attempt at enlightenment.
It's like a global spider's web. The center of the spider, or the spider in the center of the web, is in Europe. It's at operational level. It's in places like London and Rome and Paris and Germany. This web goes out across the world, and each strand in the web is an organization or a secret society that answers to the spider. The closer the strand is to the spider, the more secretive it is, the more exclusive it is. And if we're talking about names, what these guys try to do in the most secretive of their organizations is not to give them names at all. Because it's much more difficult to research something and uncover something that doesn't have a name. You want to try it. So you have to give it a name. You have to take that power away from this technique of no naming and give it a name. It doesn't matter if that's what they call it or not. You've given it a name, and therefore you've given it an existence which you can then start to uncover it. So I call it the Illuminati, and that's a name that's often been used. It's been used officially by an organization called the Bavarian Illuminati, which came obviously out of Germany through the Rothschilds and a guy called Adam Weishaupt. But that's not the Illuminati I'm talking about. That's a strand in the web. The web I call the Illuminati goes back thousands of years and beyond.
The techniques of control used by the New World Order are becoming more advanced, with huge technological advances in medicine and computers. These two areas are key in the manipulation of the human consciousness. While human beings have the ability to use such technology to better our existence, there will be and always have been those individuals and corporations who wish to use it as a tool of control and discipline.
With the spider's web, they want to defend the outer reaches of the web so you don't start to get deeper into it. So they're quite happy for people to think that the Bilderberg Group is it. That's where it's all being orchestrated through, because they're out here. They're not where it really is. It is such a fundamental foundation of this whole conspiracy. Keep from people, by controlling education, by controlling the mainstream media, information, and by controlling mainstream science big time through funding, not least funding. You keep from the people the true, vast, infinite, all possibility nature of reality, and you tell them this is what it is, and they live their lives thinking constantly, can't be done, I can't do this, that's impossible. And it just keeps them in the pen.
In the very near future, every single person will have a mandatory mark if they want to be able to buy or sell. There will be no social divide. What is amazing is that this was written 2,000 years ago, when you could buy and sell with goats. You didn't need money. The mark itself would have to be very clear and clever, because it would somehow have to reveal a person's known wealth. In today's age, that's not really a problem, because we have a computer system and banking. Our mark could simply be a barcode. The truth may be found in the number 666. The Hebrew and Greek alphabet do not have separate characters or alphabets for numbers and letters. Letters are also used as numbers, so each letter has a numerical value. Microchip implants being one of the latest. The EAM13 International Barcode has 30 digits. The following is an example of how we constantly get 666 out of our barcodes. Every barcode has 3 taller bars, one at the start, one in the middle, and one at the end. This bar has a numerical value of 6. So all barcodes have 666 on them. This is the second-tier coding system used by the scribes to hide their secrets. Whether humans are supposed to be stamped with the barcode or not remains to be seen. But the system we have now in place for mass control and observation are obvious. We pay with the swipe of a card or by using our mobile phones. Soon this will change, and we may have implants of microchips so we can scan our hands. Our code will tell the computer what we are worth and then deduct the payment.
People like George Orwell were talking basically about barcoded people. Other people who've talked about this in novels or said, in statements to various people that this is what's coming because they know. They have over the decades predicted technology or predicted changes in society that required technology like the microchip that no one even thought of in the mainstream then.
It has been commonplace to microchip animals, giving a pet's owner the ability to quickly locate it if it escapes. There are reasons for microchipping criminals, for microchipping people with Alzheimer's, people who don't have any motor control over their bodies, or children who may have been abducted. It will come in the form of credit. Right now, one of the biggest problems in the credit card industry is identity theft. Somebody using your credit cards. What better way to protect your credit by having a chip somewhere in your wrist or neck? Ultimately, this could lead to precarious results for our identities and privacy. The long-term goal is to tag each and every one of us, to make us electronically aware so we are meshed into a network.
People who've accepted this conspiracy talk about the microchip being a device to track people. I keep saying all the time, there's never one reason for anything that these people do. Yes, on one level it's about tracking people, absolutely, but it's not only about that. It's about getting access to the body computer system, which is a electrochemical organism, and manipulating it mentally, emotionally, and physically through the chip. Without nanotechnology and microchips, they could not build their total central global control system of every man, woman, and child on the planet. So it appears when it's necessary.
When you actually look at the world online actually means to be under the direct control or connected to a mainframe and part of a network. What is a network? You're worked into the net. What is the net? It is something that catches you or ensnares you. What is the web? It catches and ensnares. The question now is, what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it?
What the conspiracy, because the people behind the conspiracy understand how all this works. Their bottom line, their foundation of this entire conspiracy is to disconnect mind from consciousness, which is like going on the internet and instead of the guy at the keyboard deciding where he goes, the computer's now deciding. Even more than that, the computer's now deciding what you think of the websites when you get there. In other words, the computer has taken over. The machine, if you want to call it that, it's far more than that, but the machine has taken over.
There have always been those who wish to control mankind, and they see themselves as illuminated to some degree. But this right to control, to dictate, is not something that should be forced upon us. We have the right to free speech, to protest, to stand up and say we won't take this. There are many who are waiting for a revolution, waiting for the people to riot, to fight back on a physical level. And these people appear to be the very individuals who control us in the first place. If riots take place and the people take this fight to the government, expect a lot of casualties and little support from those still inside the proverbial box. Many believe this revolution will take a different form and the fight will be won in other arenas. The most alarming element of the New World Order is a co-conspirator. In the shadows of the other dimensions is a nefarious force waging war upon humans from the space between spaces. A dark force that governs not only our thoughts and actions, but our very souls. There is darkness from another realm that forces us into a life of repetitive cycles and keeps us locked away.
Well, there's two ways of facing a problem. There's finding a solution, and we're bloody drowning in them. And there's removing the cause of the problem. There are many levels to the cause of the problem, but the fundamental one is most people are not conscious. They're in mind. They're in body-computer reality. So becoming conscious is vital because everything comes from that. People say, what do I do? What do I do? Well, become conscious and you'll know what to do.
Their influence reaches into governments, religious powers, and business. They are unseen, unheard, and yet their intent is clear. To change the world for their own ends. They are manipulating the world through new technologies, bringing down old empires to make way for a new form of world rule, breaking up a European Union, fostering terrorism, and much more. What is the real truth? Where did they come from? What are their beliefs and who are they? Occasionally, mankind has had visions of them and sensed their presence.
The human perception has been so programmed with limitation, with a sense of I can't, the sense of it cannot be, that it's left to very few, compared with the global population, to explore beyond that sense of can be. I was in America on a speaking tour. I say a speaking tour in those days. A speaking tour largely meant talking to myself. You know, I mean, I went to Chicago and spoke to 8 people, or near Chicago anyway. But on that speaking tour, over a period of about 15 days, I met 12 separate people, and I was going to a different place every day, who told me the same basic story, how they'd seen humans turn into a reptilian form and then back again.
They are inhuman. They've got little slitty eyes, and somehow there's a part of that that doesn't resonate with us. There's a lot of people out there who are under the misapprehension that somehow all of this is promulgated by David Icke and nobody else, and this is absolutely not true. I was once privileged to sit at a dinner table with David Icke and Jordan Maxwell. David was on one side, Jordan was the other, and they started telling stories to each other. And I had a dictaphone in my pocket. Here's a piece of advice to any would-be journalists here who happen to be watching this. Always have a dictaphone in your pocket. You never know when it's going to be useful to you. So I asked their permission. I put the dictaphone on the table, and then they were exchanging anecdotes with each other about reptilians like a tennis match. It was fascinating. And I'll just give a couple of those because they're more than interesting. I'll start with Jordan's story. I'll condense this as best I can. He was told this story by a grown woman who he knew personally about her experience when she was a small girl. And she came from an Air Force family and lived on a military base. And her father had the kind of job such that when the phone rang, sometimes he had 10 minutes to leave the house with a packed bag, and he might not be back for a couple of weeks. And whenever that happened, the protocol was that she would not be in the house alone for any reason. And on this one occasion, she begged her father to be left in the house. She said, well, I'm a big girl now, I can take care of myself, there's nothing to worry about. And her father demurred. And so there were guards on the outside of the house, and this was inside a secure installation, and so there didn't really seem to be a problem. She was in the house on her own. She was a young girl, she was 11 or 12 years old or something like that. And the story that she reports was this. She said that a reptilian being, a large reptilian being, emerged from the walk-in closet. The reptilian being was so tall that it had to duck to get out of the door of the walk-in closet. And as this little girl froze in terror, this creature floated across the floor towards her, didn't actually touch the ground. It clearly had designs on something that didn't seem to be very welcome to her. She ran to the bathroom, she locked herself in the bathroom, and she screamed and screamed and screamed as this creature clawed on the outside of the door. And then finally, the guards heard her, who were outside the house. They came rushing in, this was their job, and this creature disappeared. And the claw marks were visible on the outside of the door. When her father got back, she said, "This is why you must never be in the house alone." And it's interesting because her father didn't even seem particularly astonished by what had happened. It was like this was one of the things that it was known could happen. Go figure. This was told by this grown woman to Jordan Maxwell 20, 30 years later after this had all happened.
Myself and a female MyLab friend were abducted together, and we were brought to an underground base in the high desert of Southern California, once again in the Victorville, Barstow area. And we were confronted by what appeared to us to be three military people. Again, one of them was taller than the other two, and it was yelling at my friend and I. We were kind of made to stand at attention several feet away from these three beings, but one of them was in the guise of a high-ranking officer, and the high-ranking officer was irate. It was screaming at us, yelling at us, "What are we doing? Like, how do we know so much?" Right? And I knew immediately that this tall being was not a human. I knew that it was really a reptilian because they often assume the guise of military personnel. Sometimes these abductees in MyLabs in the underground bases can look at what's supposed to be a military person, but notice that they have vertical pupils, or notice that they don't communicate much, and once in a while they growl or they hiss or they do something to give themselves away. And while this tall general or this tall officer was berating the both of us, I looked at my friend and I said, "This is not a dream, this is real. We're having a real experience here, so remember this," right? And then the being, the assumed supposed military guy just kept yelling at us. Eventually they sent us back. The reptilian symbology, which is common in the folkloric traditions of countless cultures throughout the planet and throughout history, is not so much a metaphor or an archetype as it is a way to describe the existence of these beings, that they really have existed all this time, and that they've played a role in the development of civilization, that they've intervened at critical points in human history. So this is why we are constantly bombarded with reptile symbology, serpent symbology, dragons, and so forth. It's not to do with any archetype or metaphor. It has to do with the existence of these beings and the occulted knowledge going way back that these beings are here, and they've been involved with us all along. In the high desert of Southern California, me and our team were doing what we call reptilian stakeouts. One of our friends, a female MyLab, was having frequent reptilian experiences. The reptilians were entering the house through a number of portal entries, one of which was in the children's bedroom. And this goes back to the lore about the boogeyman coming out of wardrobes, coming out of closets. That this is the basis for that, is that these entities, not just reptilians but other beings, they create these interdimensional energetic portal entries, which allows them, whether they're in our plane of existence from another dimension, or hovering in some spacecraft somewhere, they enter through these portal entries. And in the children's bedroom, there was this portal entry in the closet, the wardrobe, as they call it in the UK and other places. And me and my colleagues would do what we call reptilian stakeouts, where me and a MyLab buddy would flip a coin, and the winner would sleep on the bed, and the loser would sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor. And then the next night we'd alternate. And on one occasion, I woke up to find this large 6 foot tall plus reptilian, very robust, very large chest, very large biceps, very large muscles, looming over me as I lay there. I was immobilized, and I tried to call out to my friend, but I couldn't even manifest a squeak. It was like the power of speaking had been taken from me momentarily. And this being radiated this negative energy, which I liken to when some of the big cats in our world, when they emit a roar, the roar reverberates in the chest cavity of, say, a human being, and effectively paralyzes the human being, and then the tiger, or whatever the case may be, can then attack and devour the person. Well, these beings, some of them, they emit a very negative energy, which makes one's skin crawl and which induces paralysis. So I lay there for what seemed to be a long time while this thing was looming over me. And what was interesting, I forgot to mention, was there was also 3 or 4 members of our team outside in the living room, sleeping in sleeping bags, and they didn't hear anything. On another occasion in that house, there were different reptilians, basically all of the same species, but in different stages of maturation. And so there were immature reptoids, and we call them baby Godzillas, because when, like, the lady of the house and the children drew sketches, that's what came to me. They looked like little baby Godzillas. And one of these, at least one of these, was playing with the youngest daughter, who was like 4 years old at the time. They would play in that children's bedroom during the day, and the little reptoid was fascinated with the little girl's toys. In particular, one toy that looked like a telephone and that had big keys for numbers and letters, and when you pressed a given key, it emitted a certain tone. So the lady of the house, at odd times during the day, when only her little daughter was home, would hear these tones coming out of the bedroom. And on this one occasion, the little girl came out, and this little girl is now an adult. She has a child now. She said, "Mom, me and my friend, we're hungry, right?" And so my friend humored the little girl. She walked back into the bedroom with 2 platters with a slice of pizza on each one. When she walked into the bedroom, she noticed her daughter sitting Indian style on the floor, and alongside of her daughter was one of these little immature reptilian beings, and they were playing with that toy, making all these tones. My friend was so startled, she dropped both plates. The reptilian made kind of like a pig kind of squealing sound, and it fled into the closet and disappeared. Now, me and my friend, on another occasion, we were sleeping in that room again. I was in the bed, and he was on the floor, and I began to hear noises coming out of the closet, right? So I sat bolt upright, and I looked around, and I was punched in the face, bang, bang, on this cheek and on this cheek, and I was knocked out, and my cheeks ached for weeks thereafter. And I believe it was the little reptilian. It wasn't the big reptilian or big reptilians. It was one of the little ones, and it was just at the right height to punch me out. So I had a lot of experiences in that place. On another occasion, those reptilians followed me from that place in the high desert of Southern California to my house in San Diego, which is a good 2.5 hour drive. And I had just driven back from the high desert, settled down, I was laying in bed reading, and I fell asleep. And sometime later, I was rolled over in bed, and I was jabbed at the base of my spine with an injection. And as I was laid on my side, I looked over and I saw what I at first thought was a very tall soldier in khaki uniform. And then I saw something swishing around behind it. Later on, in hindsight, I realized it was a very tall reptilian that just happened to be brownish khaki colored. Because when I had time to think about it, the thing that was swishing around behind it was his tail. And it was interesting because those reptilians had told my friend, the lady of the house, that they were going to get back at me basically for always going up there and like, I guess, annoying them or something. So they followed me back to hundreds of miles away to San Diego, and they did this to me. And I developed the following day. I was working at ComNav Airpac in communications, and my back was hurting me. I could feel a puncture wound at the base of my spine. I could feel it, an injection mark. And I had a terrific headache, and I was sitting in the main office, and there was an annex, another office off to the left, where the lady who worked in there was on leave or something. So I went in to lay down there just to flatten out my back because my back hurt so much. Had a tremendous headache, was sweating profusely, big time diarrhea, right? And what was interesting was I went to an emergency ward, and I said to the lady, the nurse who was checking me out, I said, this is going to sound crazy, but last night I was rolled over on my side, and some soldier, some military-looking guy, very tall, like jabbed me at the base of my spine with a hypodermic needle. And she felt it. She said, yes, I see it. I don't doubt you at all. Something happened. And then what was interesting was I called up my friend who was living in the high desert of Southern California, and she told me her husband and her son had all come down with similar symptoms after I had left.
We have given names to this fleeting transcendental blips in the reality of human consciousness. Angels, demons, ghosts, fairies, elves, aliens, reptilians, men in black, and now dark, all-powerful secret societies. Thousands of years of spouting the same lies has created massive populations across the globe that now believe in a deity. And yet, if we take a look at the very first text of all religions, we discover that our ancestors were talking about beings that came from another place, another dimension. They reveal that beings descended often with crafts. Then they took control of humanity, formed the first civilizations, taught us to grow crops, science, languages, and more. They placed superhuman watchers over us to keep us in our place. We in return worshiped them and turned them into our gods. The stories tell us how they had superhuman powers. They could fly and change shape. They had incredible weapons of light, chariots that flew through the sky, and they lived for very long periods of time. But the truth is that these ancient aliens, beings of light that are in fact our prison guards, and we are under their control. Archaeology and history reveal that the times before these beings arrived, humans lived a peaceful existence. The legendary histories tell us quite clearly that these invaders mated with chosen humans and created a special breed. This new breed became our kings and queens and were themselves worshipped as gods. One unique element we see in historical text and art is the ability of these special beings to shape-shift. Many texts even tell of how abhorrent they were to look upon. Snake-like reptilian elements are at the forefront of descriptions. Today, many call them reptilians or draconians. It is nothing new. In fact, it has been known for a very long time. What we do know is that these watchers continued in what has been described as the underground stream. They bred into humanity and melted away. Soon, massive secret societies emerged that fostered the original teachings of the Shining Ones. Today, these secret societies controlled by this hybrid race are in complete control of the world. The battles between men are a part of a bigger control of mankind and are preordained by the Watchers. They are the powers that rule the world. Their history is the mythology of each and every society and civilization. The stories across the world of serpent gods, dragons, and beings of light are the stories of the mass invasion on a worldwide scale. It is said that in ancient times we called aliens angels because we did not know what they were. Today it is said we call them aliens because we know better. There is in fact no difference between them. Angels and aliens are the same thing. Angels came, taught us, manipulated us with the words from the gods, and even abducted us. Today, aliens do the same. In fact, just like in ancient times, abductees claim that they were taken by reptilian-like beings. Strange faces, strange craft, humanoids with elongated serpent-like eyes, spacesuits, spaceships, depictions of planets with rings that could not have been known, weapons. There are huge gaps in our history that simply could not be explained in any other way. How suddenly a primitive society discovers the knowledge to become a world-leading civilization with the ability to build massive superstructures that point to specific locations in the sky. If mankind was creating some kind of lie about his origins, then he was doing so on a grand scale, and our modern historians are ignoring their ancestors' explanations that aliens came, took control, and took over our minds. Ancient artifacts across the world revealed non-human intelligent creatures at the hands of machines and weapons superior to the ordinary human beings below them. We are under the control of a hybrid species of alien beings who rule the world. Beings from another reality, super weapons, superpowers, the ability to change shape to a serpentine reptilian appearance, the creation of civilization, the teaching of humanity, the erection of huge structures, the sudden knowledge of mankind, the forming of religions with deities and divine beings, and the forming of a line of special hybrid kings and queens. There is absolutely no explanation why cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years all come up with the same cultural origins of extraterrestrial superhuman beings that all look and act the same. The truth is that these early historians were recording history, not creating myths. And so, as time passed, mankind continued to do the bidding of the masters. They went to the temple or church and worshipped the ancient aliens depicted in light as great benefactors of humanity. As the years passed and the hybrid species ruled the lands, things changed. Civilizations grew and one state battled another. Why, we cannot truly say, but the same families were always behind the decisions of both sides. It has taken the threat of more warfare and bloodshed to overcome the dark elements of our own psychologies to get to this state. The fear of more death is a strong force. It has not always been warfare that has worked. After each and every financial crash, humans have come together and insisted on stronger bonds and more unity. Although we cannot see the entities we are describing without altering our vision, they are there, and they are opposing forces at work. We see everything around us because of a very small part of the wave spectrum. We call it light, but there are many kinds of light, and we only see a sliver. Outside of that minor part of the spectrum, there are other things we cannot see. Over thousands of years, there have been millions of people that have seen beyond our normal spectrum. They have witnessed these other beings. One large group who did so were the ancient shaman. Through the use of drugs and mind-altering techniques, they witnessed the beings all around them, and they left records for us. To simplify, what they told us was that there were good beings and bad beings, and one side waged against the other. Today, there are many mediums who claim the same thing. However, our ancestors told us precisely what had happened. The Shining Ones came down. They set up the Watchers to control humans and foster civilization. But some of these Watchers didn't like what they were doing and actually fell in love with humans and mated with them. The Shining Ones declared war on these Watchers and tried to wipe them out. The bad hybrid species caused a global flood. Benevolent beings saving humans from disaster, battles in the sky, a war between those who would control us and those who would set us free. Under the guise of free will and individualism, the systems in place around us actually ensures that we have no choice but to comply and obey an underlying agenda that at its core is evil, put in place by beings that feed and nurture the control they maintain over planet Earth. With the formidable alliance of these powerful forces against mankind, we as a people face the greatest peril in the history of our existence. There can be no defense against the enormity of their strength and might. We stand at the brink of genocide and slavery. Our only hope for salvation is the intervention by a benevolent alien species with equal supremacy. In other words, we must all pray for a miracle.